So, folks, I want to talk about the link between aviation safety and AI agents, but this is a bit of a different talk. This is what I call a pointillist talk. Pointillism was an art movement back in France in the 1880s, and the idea is you draw dots, and you only see the painting when you step back. So, my intention in this talk is not to give you any explanations or conclusions, but just a bunch of points and facts. And hopefully, with time and distance, you will see the picture. I want to start back in the 80s. This whole question of how people deal with automated systems is not new. We've been looking at it for more than a century. And there's a lot of literature in it, like that ironies paper. The first irony is that automation usually makes easy things easier and the hard things harder. This is an important point. The second irony of automation is that we automate because we think humans are unreliable, but then we expect them to jump in and rescue the system if something breaks. And the third irony of automation is that we need practice to keep our skills sharp, but automation depletes the opportunity to keep those skills sharp with practice. And so the repeated failure pattern we see is that when a system fails, we ask the humans to step in and take over, but they come in cold. They don't know what's happening. And this leads to what I like to call the lumberjack effect, which is the higher automation takes you, the more distance you have to
Human in the loop. Humans in the loop.
Human in the loop. The human in the loop.
Human in the loop.
The human in the loop. Human in the loop.
Human in the loop. Humans in the loop.
The human in the loop.
The human in the loop.
So that should be familiar. 10 years ago, I fell into this rabbit hole of aviation disaster on YouTube. I must have binge watched entire seasons of these discovery shows about air crash
What we find
investigations.
is that in 68% of these accidents, automation dependency plays a significant part in leading these crews to either a critical flight attitude. Guy, I'm going to suggest to you that there's basically 3 levels of automation in our planes.
That, by the way, is the teacher at American who's teaching pilots at the American Airlines Academy. And so what the point he's trying to make is that automation can actually make things worse because they reach instinctively for the highest level of automation, but combined with a situation that is changing.
They needed to drop down a level in order to maintain their situational awareness. They had to reduce workload.
You have to go down, right? Don't always reach for the highest level. This is a Turing Award winner. Now you might recognize him from compilers. His point was that programming isn't about the code, it is about the mental model that lives in all the programmers' heads. This is not about the hedge funds, it's about how you maintain awareness. What is it about? You look at your environment, you make a model, and then you predict. But paradoxically, automation can actually increase complexity because in addition to your own thing, you also have to keep track of the automation. Which brings us to Air France 447. Tragic accident, Airbus 330, first time it ever crashed on its way to across Atlantic. How do wings work? Wings work when air goes over the wings very fast and that produces lift and you need the right angle of attack. If you don't have the right angle of attack, you go into a stall. And there's a very typical way of getting out of the stall, which is that you have to bring the nose down. If you're in a stall, you basically fall in. So what happened in 447 was their airspeed indication went off because of one pitot tube failure. That disconnected the autopilot. The autopilot came off, which means all the typical protections of not going into a stall, of not managing your speed, all those went off. The pilots were handed full manual control. They had almost never done that. And what they instinctively did that is they pulled up. It was almost like a childlike response. They thought they were going down, they pulled up. And when they pulled up, they got into a stall because if you just increase your angle of attack, you get into a stall.
Stall.
These were all the warnings that were going off in the cockpit at the time. They could not figure out what was happening. They were going into a stall because they pulled back on the nose. This is what they saw. We don't understand anything. We don't know what's happening. They were falling at the rate of 11,000 feet a minute. And paradoxically, the stall warning also went silent because the computer could not read anything reliably. This was 3 minutes after the first disconnection. And 4 minutes after the disconnection, unfortunately, they crashed into the Atlantic because nothing had failed They just could not form a good enough mental model. Thank you. That's 5 minutes.